The news coming out of India and Pakistan recently, well, it's been pretty intense. Hard to ignore.
Absolutely. It went from one awful event to this really worrying standoff very quickly.
Yeah, and if you're trying to get your head around it, like me, you want to understand what's actually going on, without getting lost in every single tweet or headline.
Exactly. And that's what we're trying to do here in this deep dive. Give you a clear, sort of structured picture of the military actions, the conflict between India and Pakistan just in these last few weeks of 2025.
We've gone through the news reports, the official statements,
Trying to pull out the core information for you.
and it's not just about the what. We really want to dig into the why, right?
Yeah.
The motivations, how the world is reacting.
Definitely. So we'll trace the timeline, starting with that terrible attack back on April 22nd.
Near Pahalgam, that was in Indian-administered Kashmir. What exactly happened there? Because that seems to be the trigger for all this.
It does. It was an attack in a tourist area, and tragically, 26 people were killed. Mostly Hindu tourists, it seems.
And that number, 26 dead, immediately made it stand out, didn't it?
It did. It was the deadliest attack in that region since the Pulwama bombing back in 2019. So straight away, it felt like a significant escalation.
And India didn't waste any time pointing fingers.
No, the blame was immediate. India accused Pakistan-based militants. The Resistance Front, or TRF, claimed they did it.
Right, TRF. And they're seen as a front for Lashkar-e-Taiba, aren't they?
That's the general consensus, yes. A group known to operate out of Pakistan.
So that accusation, that really set the ball rolling for what came next. The diplomatic moves on April 23rd, 24th, they were pretty drastic.
Oh, absolutely. India rolled out some very tough measures.
Like what specifically?
Well, the big one, perhaps, was suspending the 1960 Indus Waters Treaty.
Wow. Suspending a water treaty, that sounds huge.
It is huge. I mean, it has massive potential consequences for agriculture, for millions of people downstream in Pakistan. It's not just symbolic.
No kidding. What else?
They also sealed the mainland border crossing, Atari Wagah, downgraded diplomatic ties, kicked out Pakistani diplomats,
Right.
halted all trade between the two countries, and banned Pakistani planes from Indian airspace. A whole raft of measures.
That Indus treaty suspension, though, feels like pressing a really sensitive button. And Pakistan, how did they react?
Just as quickly, really. Within about 24 hours, they retaliated.
Tit for tat.
Pretty much. Blocked their airspace to Indian flights, closed their side of the Wagah border, suspended bilateral trade, too.
So mirroring India's moves.
Yes, and they also dropped a warning about possibly suspending the 1972 Simla Agreement.
The Simla Agreement, isn't that the framework meant to, manage things between them, prevent conflict?
Exactly. It's been a cornerstone, however shaky, of their relationship for decades. Threatening that really raised the stakes about where this was all heading.
So diplomatically, things basically froze solid almost overnight.
Pretty much, yeah. Very strained.
And then the focus shifted. The line of control, the Lala Sea, things started heating up there in late April.
That's right. Around April 25th, we started seeing border skirmishes. Initially, reports of Pakistani forces opening fire across the Lala Sea at night.
Small arms fire, that kind of thing.
Yeah, small arms, machine guns across several sectors. But it didn't stay small for long.
It escalated.
It did. By April 26th, 27th, it seemed much more coordinated. Reports of simultaneous attacks on dozens of Indian Army posts.
Thousands. Whereabouts?
Places like Uri, Tangdar, Kupwara, Gurez. Pretty much spread out along the Lala Sea in Kashmir.
That sounds intense, and India fired back, obviously.
Right. Indian forces retaliated. And these exchanges, well, they quickly became the heaviest cross-border fighting seen in at least 4 years.
4 years. So that ceasefire they agreed back in February 2021.
Yeah, that ceasefire agreement was looking incredibly fragile by this point, under immense strain.
Okay, so while all this is happening on the border, Pakistan actually made an offer about the initial Pahalgam attack, right? An investigation.
They did. Around April 27th, as the shooting intensified, the Pakistani Prime Minister, Shehbaz Sharif, offered a, quote, neutral, transparent, and credible investigation.
How did India take that?
Well, with a lot of skepticism, it seems. Given the history, India likely felt such an investigation wouldn't really get to what they saw as the truth. Not much confidence there.
Understandable, I suppose, given their immediate accusation. And Sharif didn't just offer investigations, he issued some stark warnings, too.
He did, especially about the water issue. He explicitly said, if India blocked Pakistan's water supply from the Indus, well, that would be seen as aggression, and Pakistan would respond strongly.
Calling the Indus Pakistan's jugular vein.
Exactly, underscoring just how vital that water is. And other Pakistani politicians piled on, some using even stronger language. It's clearly a very, very sensitive point.
And militarily, Pakistan seemed to be bracing for something more from India?
Definitely. They put their military on high alert, started moving reserve troops, heavy artillery, including those Chinese-made SH-15 howitzers.
SH-15s, what's significant about them?
They're relatively new, long-range, quite precise. Moving them towards Kashmir suggested they were preparing for potentially serious artillery exchanges,
Hmm.
maybe anticipating a bigger Indian strike in retaliation for Pahalgam.
Right. Preparing for the worst. Then came May 3rd. Pakistan tested a missile.
Yes, they test-launched an Abdali short-range ballistic missile.
Mhm.
Range is about 450 kilometers.
And the message was?
Pretty clear, according to their state media, a signal of readiness, sending a message about their capabilities.
And meanwhile, what was the mood like? You mentioned Indian media coverage.
Yeah, reports described Indian media coverage as almost war room style. Very nationalistic, very focused on potential conflict, which is probably added to public anxiety.
A really charged atmosphere then. And those direct communication lines like the DGMO hotline?
Yeah.
They weren't helping. What's DGMO again?
Directors General of Military Operations. Senior officers on both sides meant to manage border issues.
Right, so they talked.
They did. There was a call in early May. India apparently urged Pakistan to stop the ceasefire violations, but it clearly didn't work. The clashes just continued.
Which brings us to May 7th, a really significant date. India launched Operation Sindoor. What was that?
In the early hours of May 7th, India carried out what it called coordinated precision strikes
Strikes where?
inside Pakistan, targeting what India claimed was militant infrastructure. Reports mentioned sites in Pakistan-administered Kashmir near Muzaffarabad and also in Pakistan's Punjab province across the international border.
So hitting targets beyond just Kashmir, what kind of targets?
India said they were targeting militant launch pads, training facilities, the infrastructure used by the groups they blame for Pahalgam. They used fighter jets, apparently, maybe long-range artillery, too. Explosions were reported in several areas.
And India was upfront about the reason.
Absolutely. They explicitly linked Operation Sindoor to the Pahalgam attack, said it was a direct counterterrorism strike against those responsible, hitting them where they operate.
Okay. Pakistan's reaction must have been furious.
It was immediate and strong condemnation. They called it an unprovoked attack, a blatant act of war.
Did they give details on the damage? Casualties?
Pakistan's military reported Indian missiles hit about 6 locations. They said at least 8 Pakistani citizens were killed, 35 wounded. Initially, they stated all casualties were civilians.
Initially?
Yeah, because later, Jaish-e-Mohammed, another Pakistan-based militant group, actually admitted that 10 family members of its leader were among those killed in the strikes.
Really? James admitted that. That complicates the all-civilian claim.
It does add a significant wrinkle, yes.
And Pakistan didn't just condemn verbally on May 7th. They acted.
Immediately. An emergency National Security Committee meeting was held in Islamabad. PM Sharif addressed the nation, condemned India, vowed retaliation.
Authorizing the military to respond?
Yes, at a time and place of their choosing, was the phrase used.
Uh-huh.
And things escalated on the ground very fast after that.
So,
Heavy artillery and rocket fire erupted along the entire Lazah. Both sides shelling heavily. Villages were hit. Civilian casualties started mounting quickly on both sides.
oh, man.
India reported at least 3 civilians killed that day by Pakistani shelling. Pakistan reported deaths, too. The Pakistan Air Force was scrambled. Air raid sirens went off in major cities like Islamabad and Lahore.
Sounds like brinkmanship, edging very close. Did Pakistan claim any military successes?
They claim they shot down multiple Indian aircraft involved in the strikes. India, however, hasn't confirmed losing any planes.
So, conflicting claims there. By the end of May 7th, a serious escalation. Did it calm down after that?
Unfortunately, no. The fighting carried right into May 8th.
What happened on the 8th?
Intense fighting continued along the Lasai. Pakistan also launched some limited retaliatory actions beyond Kashmir.
Like what?
India's Ministry of Defense reported Pakistani drone and missile attacks targeting Indian Air Force bases further inside India. Places in western India, Chandigarh, Rajasthan, Gujarat.
Were they successful? Did they hit anything?
India says no. They claim their air defenses intercepted all the drones and missiles, preventing any significant damage.
Okay. And on the Lost Sea?
Pakistan reportedly intensified its artillery barrages. Again, reports of civilian areas being hit. By the end of May 8th, India was tallying over 60 ceasefire violations by Pakistan since late April.
60. Across how many areas?
At least 18 different locations along the border, they said. And tragically, more civilian casualties reported. India claims 16 killed and 59 injured on their side in total by that point.
And Pakistan's position on that?
Pakistan maintained they were only targeting Indian military posts, and any civilian harm was uh, unintentional collateral damage.
It's just a horrific picture. So much suffering for ordinary people caught in the middle.
Which brings us pretty much up to date, May 9th. What's the current situation? Any signs of things cooling down?
Right now, May 9th? No, not really. It's still a very tense, very dangerous standoff.
Still active. Yes. Overnight, Indian forces said they shot down several armed drones that crossed into Indian Punjab and Kashmir. Reports of loud explosions near Amritsar, likely from those interceptions.
Wow, so both sides still on edge.
Absolutely. Military's on high alert. Pakistan's army spokesperson actually came out and said publicly there'd be no de-escalation until Pakistan felt it had fully responded to India's strikes.
No de-escalation, that's blunt.
Very. And on the Indian side, frontline units are reportedly on a war footing. Some border villages have been evacuated as a precaution.
And diplomacy?
Still frozen. Media on both sides is full of speculation about, could this become a wider war? The risk feels very real.
It's useful, I think, to just quickly map out where all this has been happening. Can you recap the main locations?
Sure. So the trigger. Pahalgam in Indian-administered Kashmir, the main conflict zone, the line of control across multiple sectors there.
Right.
The Attari-Wagah border crossing in Punjab closed. Areas near Amritsar and elsewhere in Indian Punjab saw drone activity.
Okay. And on the Pakistani side?
Pakistan-administered Kashmir, especially near Muzaffarabad, hit by Indian strikes. Pakistani Punjab province, the border districts on high alert, also hit by strikes.
And then those reported Pakistani retaliatory attempts further west.
Yeah, targeting Indian air bases reportedly in Haryana, Rajasthan, Gujarat. So a fairly wide geographical spread of incidents.
Got it. And throughout this, obviously, lots of statements, lots of rhetoric. Can we summarize the main messages from each government? India first.
From India, it's been consistent. Strong condemnation of the Pahalgam attack as terrorism. Blaming Pakistan. Vowing strong retribution. Justifying their own strikes. Operation Sindoor as counterterrorism, self-defense.
And the military emphasizing Pakistani aggression on the loss.
Exactly. And politically, seems like broad domestic support in India for the government's tough stance.
Okay. And Pakistan. What's their narrative?
Pakistan's PM Sharif offered the investigation, but also strongly condemned India's strikes as aggression. Big emphasis on the water security threat. The military echoed the condemnation, vowed retaliation.
Any political divisions there?
Well, interestingly, the main opposition party, PTI, boycotted a recent all-parties conference, convened to discuss the crisis. So, maybe not total unity. And Pakistan's Foreign Office has been very active.
Doing what?
Denying any Pakistani state involvement in Pahalgam, accusing India of basically inventing a pretext for aggression, and lobbying internationally for support and condemnation of India's actions.
Which leads us to the international reaction. How has the world responded to this? It involves two nuclear powers after all.
Understandably, with a lot of concern, alarm, really, the UN Secretary General called for maximum restraint, offered mediation.
What about the major powers, the U.S.?
The U.S. condemned the Pahalgam attack first, then urged de-escalation from both sides. They're pressing Pakistan again to act against militant groups, while also urging restraint from India, offering intelligence help, advising their citizens. Russia suggested they could mediate, apparently at Pakistan's request. But officially, they tend to favor bilateral solutions. They've shared some intelligence with India, reportedly. China called for dialogue, peace, stressed sovereignty, counterterrorism. Some reports suggest they might push for an OIC meeting. They've also reportedly increased their own military readiness near their border with India.
And others. Europe. Neighbors.
UK. EU expressing concern, offering to help facilitate dialogue. Gulf states, quieter diplomacy, calling for peace. Turkey and Iran have been more critical of India, calling for a ceasefire, worried about regional stability.
So the overwhelming message internationally is?
Calm down. De-escalate. Please don't let this spiral. Widespread alarm about a potential conflict between two nuclear-armed states.
It really is a frightening prospect. So if we boil it down, key escalatory steps versus any attempts to de-escalate.
Escalation. India suspending the Indus Treaty, border closures, diplomatic downgrades, the Operation Sindoor strikes. Pakistan's response. Intense shelling, the missile test, the drone and missile attacks on air bases, putting forces on high alert. Nuclear rhetoric has been mostly muted officially, thankfully, but it's always there in the background.
And de-escalation attempts.
Very limited, sadly. That DGMO hotline call, the Didn't achieve much. Pakistan reaching out to Russia,
Mm.
maybe some unconfirmed back-channel messages, lots of international pressure, but no formal, sustained process seems to be underway. It feels very fragile.
And the people actually living through this, the civilian impact, it sounds awful.
It really is. Starts with the tourists killed in Pahalgam, then civilians killed and injured by shelling on both sides of the Lasi. We've heard numbers, but the real toll might be higher.
And displacement.
Thousands evacuated from border villages, schools closed, people hiding in bunkers, property damaged, infrastructure likely hit too.
The fear must be immense.
Absolutely. Psychological impact is huge. Jitters in cities far from the border. Memories of past wars resurfacing. Reports of some panic buying. Rumors spreading.
Is humanitarian aid getting through?
Local agencies are doing what they can. But access for international NGOs or media seems restricted, especially near the Lada Sea. The Red Cross has offered help. Hospitals are treating the wounded. There's also concern about unexploded shells.
And that nuclear anxiety you mentioned.
While governments are being careful with their public language, the fact that both countries have nuclear weapons casts a long shadow. International concern is high. There have been some reports of basic civil defense drills or even iodine tablet distribution in some border areas, though that might be more precautionary rumor than official policy yet.
And it affects people beyond the immediate border zone too, right?
Definitely. Families separated by the border closure, people needing medical visas, stuck.
Mm-hmm.
Trade disruptions could cause shortages eventually. The economic impact, especially on tourism and local economies, is already being felt.
Okay, so wrapping this up, trying to make sense of it all. What are the absolutely crucial takeaways from this deep dive?
I think the main points are pretty stark. You had a horrific terror attack. That acted as a catalyst to spark, and it led to a really rapid, really dangerous escalation.
Involving major military action?
Right, significant cross-border strikes by India, intense fighting along the Lost Sea, and severe diplomatic fallout, suspending treaties, closing borders.
With a terrible cost for
The
civilians.
devastating impact on civilians caught in the middle. And all of this has, understandably, set off alarm bells across the world.
And as we're talking now, May 9th, 2025, the bottom line is it's still incredibly tense. No clear off-ramp yet.
That's the reality, unfortunately. The situation is volatile. Statements like no de-escalation are worrying. The cycle of action and reaction seems locked in for now.
And the risk of it getting worse.
In a region with nuclear weapons, that risk remains alarmingly high.
It's a sobering situation, and maybe something for you, the listener, to think about after this. Given this pattern, this history, what would it actually take for India and Pakistan to break this cycle? What kind of fundamental changes might lead towards genuine peace, rather than just temporary ceasefires? And realistically, what can the rest of the world do, beyond calling for calm?
Big questions. No easy answers.
Definitely not. We really encourage you to keep following this, stay informed through credible news sources, because this situation is clearly far from over.